The day I saw my ex with his so-called perfect woman, something in her face made my blood run cold. I couldn't believe my eyes. It felt like a punch to the chest, seeing him laugh and hold her hand as if everything between us had never happened. Stick with me while I share my story, and if it touches you, don't forget to support our channel by hitting that subscribe button, dropping a like, and sharing it with the people you care about. I am Emma Davis, 32 years old, and for the last 2 years, I've been trying to pick up the pieces of my life after divorcing Ryan Carter. When I first married him, I trusted him completely. I thought he was my partner in every sense. I never imagined that behind my back, he was hiding secrets so deep they could destroy everything we built. The divorce itself was a shock, but seeing him now with someone else felt like reliving the betrayal all over again. I still remember the day I found out. It was subtle at first, little lies, small excuses, but over time, they stacked up until the truth became undeniable. He had been dishonest about things I never thought he could hide. The trust one had in him shattered, leaving me with anger I didn't know how to handle and heartbreak that seemed endless. Even now, I can feel the sting when I think about it, and that's why seeing him with her felt like salt on an old wound. There was something about her face that unsettled me. It wasn't anything obvious, just a flicker of arrogance or maybe deceit, I couldn't tell. But instinctively, I knew she wasn't as perfect as everyone claimed. My mind raced, comparing myself to her, thinking about all the times I had given my heart fully to someone who clearly didn't deserve it. It was a mix of hurt and disbelief, a feeling I couldn't shake no matter how hard I tried. I stood there for a long moment, watching them, feeling powerless but also strangely aware. It wasn't just about him moving on, it was about how easily he seemed to forget the pain he caused me. My anger bubbled quietly, simmering under the surface, and I realized I couldn't let it control me. I had to find a way to process everything, to reclaim the part of me that felt small and betrayed. At that moment, I made a promise to myself. I wouldn't let his actions define my life anymore. I wouldn't sit in the shadows of someone else's happiness while my own story was waiting to be written. Seeing them together didn't break me, it sparked something else. A quiet determination, a reminder that no matter what, I would rise above the heartbreak, and someday, I would show that life after betrayal could be stronger, wiser, and far more beautiful than anything he or anyone else could imagine. After the divorce, I moved to Chicago to start fresh. The city was bigger than I remembered, full of lights and noise that somehow made me feel both small and alive. I threw myself into my work as an interior designer. Every project I took on became a way to rebuild not just my home but myself. Slowly, I began to feel pieces of my confidence returning. Designing spaces, choosing colors, and creating beauty gave me a sense of control I hadn't felt in years. Even as I built my new life, memories of Ryan kept creeping in. I remembered how charming he used to be, how his words could make me feel like I could conquer the world. At the time, I thought it was love, but now I could see how easily his charm had hidden the cracks in his character. Those memories were hard to shake. Some nights, I would lie awake, thinking about the promises he had broken and the trust one had given so freely. Chicago offered distractions, but it also reminded me that life moves on, whether you are ready or not. I found small joys in the city, a quiet coffee shop where the barista knew my order, a walk along the lake during sunrise, the laughter of new friends who didn't know my past. Each day I felt a little stronger, a little more like myself. Occasionally, I heard rumors about Ryan and his new relationship. Friends would mention that he was dating someone new, someone perfect in every way. At first, it stung. I felt a mix of curiosity and anger, wondering how quickly he had moved on, how easily he could replace what we had. But over time, those rumors became less about him and more about me. They reminded me why I had left, why I had refused to settle for lies and betrayal. I started noticing small changes in myself. I laughed more freely, I made decisions without second-guessing, and I started to appreciate my own worth again. The anger I had felt immediately after the divorce was still there, but it no longer controlled me. Instead, it became a quiet force that pushed me to be better, stronger, and more careful with my heart. Life after Ryan wasn't perfect, but it was mine. I was learning to enjoy the freedom I had gained, to take pride in the life I was creating with my own hands. And though memories of him still lingered, I was starting to understand that my happiness didn't depend on him or anyone else. I was learning that the best way to heal after betrayal was to focus on myself, on my growth, and on the future I wanted to build. Every day, Chicago reminded me that new beginnings were possible, even after heartbreak. A few months into my new life, I attended a charity gala. I wasn't expecting anything dramatic, just a chance to enjoy an evening of music, food, and conversation while supporting a good cause. That was until I turned a corner and saw him. Ryan. Standing in the middle of a group, laughing like nothing had ever happened between us. And there she was, Samantha Blake. Everyone whispered about her, calling her perfect. She had the poise, the smile, and the kind of elegance that made people stare. For a moment, I froze. My stomach tightened, and my chest felt heavy. I couldn't believe I was seeing him, with her, so effortlessly happy. The shock was immediate, but then something else crept in, jealousy, though I hated admitting it. It wasn't just that he had moved on, it was that he looked so content with her, as if the life we had shared meant nothing. I studied Samantha, trying not to let him see me. At first glance, she really did look perfect, tall, poised, and polished. But as I watched, a strange intuition whispered that everything wasn't as flawless as it seemed. She laughed at Ryan's jokes a little too eagerly, touched his arm just a fraction too deliberately. There was something rehearsed in her gestures, a tension behind the smile that most people wouldn't notice. The more I observed, the more I realized she wasn't the effortless, perfect woman everyone thought she was. Her eyes betrayed moments of insecurity, tiny cracks in her confident facade. She seemed aware of being watched and adjusted constantly, as if she had something to hide. My heart pounded, not just from seeing him, but from the sudden clarity that I wasn't the only one who had recognized deception in his life. Seeing Ryan so enamored with her also stirred memories I had tried to push away, the charm that once had me captivated, the way he made everything feel exciting, the promises that now seemed hollow. It was a bitter reminder of why I had left and why I couldn't allow the past to drag me down again. Even standing there, a part of me felt a strange mix of anger and curiosity. I wanted to know what she really was like, to understand the truth behind the polished exterior. I wanted to see if Ryan's perfect woman could hold up when the masks were removed. As the night went on, I kept my distance but watched them, silently piecing together what I could. It was unsettling, yet strangely empowering. I realized that I had the advantage, experience, clarity, and the truth that Ryan and Samantha hadn't yet recognized. And in that moment, I felt the first spark of the determination that would guide me through the next steps of this unexpected chapter. After that night at the gala, I couldn't stop thinking about Ryan and Samantha. Something about her behavior didn't sit right with me. I decided to observe quietly, without letting anyone know I was paying attention. I talked to people who knew them both casually, noticed the way she spoke around him, and paid attention to small details that most would ignore. It didn't take long before I saw a pattern. Samantha was charming, yes, but it was calculated. She knew exactly how to make Ryan feel important, how to keep him focused on her and off anything uncomfortable. She flattered him at just the right moments, guided conversations in subtle ways, and had this ability to make herself look perfect while keeping everyone else around her slightly unsure. Every gesture, every compliment, every laugh felt like it was designed to control the room, and Ryan was falling right into it. As I watched her, I couldn't help but flash back to my own marriage. Ryan had used similar tactics with me, though I had never fully realized it at the time. There were the little compliments that seemed genuine but were meant to distract from the truth, the moments where he made decisions seem like they were mine, and the times he would twist situations to make me doubt myself. Seeing Samantha do the same things to him was like looking into a mirror that reflected my past. It hit me hard, the woman everyone called perfect wasn't perfect at all. She had carefully built a persona, one that hid insecurities and a manipulative streak beneath a polished surface. Ryan wasn't with someone flawless, he was with someone who knew exactly how to play him. The realization was painful but also oddly liberating. For years, I had blamed myself for trusting Ryan, for believing in his charm and his words. Now, seeing him fall for a facade reminded me that it wasn't my fault. I felt a mix of emotions: anger at Samantha for trying to manipulate someone I once loved, disappointment in Ryan for being so easily fooled again, and a strange sense of satisfaction knowing I could see through it. The truth had a clarity that made everything else fade into the background. That moment changed my perspective. It wasn't about revenge yet, but it was about understanding the reality of the situation. Samantha's perfection was nothing more than a mask, and Ryan was blind to it. I realized that knowing the truth gave me power, and power was something I hadn't felt in a long time. From that point, I began to feel a quiet determination. I would watch, I would wait, and when the time was right, the truth would come to light, and Ryan would see what I had already known all along. The so-called perfect woman was anything but, and I was finally free to observe without being hurt, without being fooled, and without losing myself in the lies that had once broken me. After realizing the truth about Samantha, I knew I had to be careful. Confronting Ryan or her immediately would only create drama, and I wasn't interested in that. I wanted something more meaningful, quiet, calculated, and satisfying in a way that wouldn't make me stoop to their level. I decided to focus on myself first, to build my life even stronger while keeping an eye on them from a distance. I threw myself deeper into my work. Every new project, every client, every decision became a way to reclaim the parts of myself that Ryan's betrayal had tried to take away. I traveled to new neighborhoods, met new people, and slowly built a life that felt entirely my own. The independence felt good, but even as I immersed myself in my own world, I couldn't ignore the curiosity about what Ryan and Samantha were really like together. Watching them quietly, I started noticing more subtle signs. Samantha's perfect demeanor sometimes slipped in private moments. She was controlling, fragile, and calculating, and Ryan still didn't see it. I realized that just by living my life well, by being strong and observant, I already had an advantage. I didn't need to yell, accuse, or expose her recklessly. What I needed was patience and timing. Still, it wasn't easy. A part of me felt bitterness creeping in. I had been hurt, betrayed, and replaced, and it was hard not to let those feelings take over. I struggled with moments of anger, imagining scenarios where I confronted them and made them see their mistakes. But then I reminded myself that real power wasn't in the drama, it was in intelligence, in subtle action, and in being the person who had risen above the chaos. Slowly, a plan started to take shape. I didn't want revenge in the traditional sense. I didn't want to ruin Samantha or humiliate Ryan. I just wanted the truth to show itself naturally, for him to finally realize what I had seen from the beginning. My strategy was simple: live well, stay strong, observe quietly, and let their true colors reveal themselves. The more I focused on my own growth, the less the past weighed on me. I started feeling empowered in ways I hadn't for years. I was in control of my life, my emotions, and my future. The subtle satisfaction of knowing I could wait, watch, and plan something meaningful gave me a quiet sense of vindication. I realized that empowerment isn't always loud, sometimes, it's the calm confidence of someone who knows the truth and doesn't need to prove it immediately. By the end of this period, I felt ready. Ready to see how things would unfold, ready to step in if necessary, but most importantly, ready to continue building my life without letting their actions define me. I knew the time for confrontation or revelation would come, but for now, I had found strength in patience, intelligence, and the quiet power of living my truth. As I continued focusing on my own life, I decided to take small, careful steps that might reveal the truth about Samantha without directly confronting anyone. I started quietly passing bits of information to a few mutual acquaintances and colleagues who spent time with Ryan and Samantha. I didn't exaggerate or lie, I simply shared subtle observations about her behavior, the little manipulations I had noticed, and inconsistencies in the perfect image she projected. At first, nothing seemed to happen. But slowly, the effects started showing. People who had once admired Samantha's flawless exterior began noticing little cracks. Her smiles seemed forced at times, her compliments calculated, and her confidence occasionally slipping when no one else was watching. Ryan, who had been so captivated by her charm, started sensing it too. He would look confused at her sudden overreactions or catch subtle signs that didn't match the image he thought he knew. Watching this unfold was strangely satisfying. It wasn't about revenge in a cruel sense, it was about letting reality speak for itself. For the first time in a long time, I felt a sense of justice in motion. Ryan began seeing glimpses of what I had known all along, and Samantha's carefully built facade was starting to wobble under its own weight. I also noticed a change in myself. I felt empowered in a way I hadn't since before the divorce. I wasn't acting out of anger anymore, I was acting with strategy and awareness. Every small act of truth I sent into their world reinforced my sense of control. I realized that real power wasn't in confrontation or drama, it was in subtlety, patience, and letting others see reality without forcing it. Even as I felt satisfaction, I couldn't ignore the moral complexity of what I was doing. I wasn't exposing anyone publicly, and I wasn't trying to humiliate Samantha. It was a quiet unveiling of reality, allowing Ryan to notice the cracks and make his own judgments. I reminded myself that this wasn't malicious, it was a way to ensure that truth had a chance to surface without me being dragged back into the emotional chaos I had worked so hard to leave behind. Each time I heard someone comment about Samantha's behavior, or noticed Ryan pausing and questioning things, I felt a mix of relief and quiet pride. It was as if the universe was balancing itself, and I was merely an observer making sure that the truth wasn't hidden forever. By the end of this period, I realized that sometimes the most effective justice doesn't come from confrontation or anger. It comes from living well, staying aware, and letting the world see the truth at its own pace. The cracks in Samantha's perfect image were proof that manipulation and deception can't last forever, and that giving space for reality to emerge can be one of the most empowering and satisfying acts of all. Sitting in my apartment one quiet evening, I found myself reflecting on my marriage to Ryan. At first, I remembered the love, the way he could make me feel like the center of his world, the laughter we shared, and the small moments that once seemed so magical. I reminded myself why I had given my heart so completely. But alongside those memories, the betrayal stood out more sharply now. The lies he had told, the moments he had chosen his own desires over our trust, and the way he had hidden parts of himself from me, it all became painfully clear. I couldn't help but think about Samantha too. Watching her now, I saw that she could never measure up to what we had, or at least, to the love I had truly invested. She had charm and a polished exterior, but there was no depth, no history, no shared struggle. My mind flashed back to small moments in my marriage that mattered, moments of honesty, of care, of commitment, and I realized that Samantha's presence could never replace them. She could mimic affection, but she couldn't replicate authenticity. The grief I had carried after the divorce had weighed heavily on me for years. I had felt betrayed, discarded, and at times, worthless. But reflecting on all of it now, I noticed a shift within myself. The pain was still there, but it no longer controlled me. Instead, it had transformed into resilience. Every lie Ryan told, every moment of betrayal, had taught me something about strength, self-worth, and discernment. I was no longer the same person who had trusted blindly, I had learned to see people clearly, to protect myself, and to rise above deceit. At the same time, I felt determination growing inside me. Not for revenge in a mean-spirited way, but to make sure the truth came to light in its own time. I had seen Samantha's cracks, Ryan's growing confusion, and I knew the culmination was approaching. The anticipation built quietly, like a storm forming on the horizon. I wasn't anxious, I was ready. I understood that life had a way of revealing the truth, and I would be there to witness it. In this reflection, I also recognized how far I had come. From heartbreak and betrayal, I had rebuilt myself. I had grown stronger, more intelligent, and more self-aware. The grief had not destroyed me, it had shaped me. It had prepared me for what was coming, for the moment when reality would show Ryan what I already knew, that Samantha's perfect image was a mask, and that true value and strength come from authenticity and character, not charm or appearances. As I looked back and considered the journey, I felt a quiet excitement for the unfolding future. The stage was set, and I could almost see the moment when the truth would finally surface. I was ready to face it, confident that I had learned enough from love and betrayal to handle whatever came next. The lessons of the past had become my armor, and I knew I would walk through the final reveal stronger than ever. A few weeks later, I attended a high-profile event in the city. The room was full of influential people, and I knew Ryan would be there. Sure enough, I spotted him across the room, proudly talking about Samantha and her perfect qualities. He described her charm, her style, and how well she handled everything in their lives, as if the world should admire her too. I stayed calm, listening quietly, letting him speak. I didn't need to interrupt or argue. Instead, I found a way to let small truths slip naturally into conversations with people around us. I mentioned subtle observations about Samantha's behavior, the little manipulations that went unnoticed, and inconsistencies in her perfect image. I didn't sound angry or jealous, I sounded casual, almost like passing along interesting details. Slowly, I noticed Ryan's reactions. At first, he tried to ignore me, continuing to boast. But as I continued, his smiles faltered, his eyes flicking toward me more often. The panic started to show, though he tried to hide it. He realized that I knew more than I should, that my calm words carried a weight he couldn't ignore. Samantha, on the other hand, began to shift in subtle ways. Her laughter became slightly forced, her movements tighter. Every compliment she gave Ryan seemed rehearsed. I could see the cracks in her carefully constructed facade appearing right before my eyes. The tension in the room increased, though most people didn't understand why. It was just visible in the small ways she carried herself. I kept my tone light, careful not to accuse or attack. But the truth had a presence of its own. The details I casually shared planted seeds in the minds of people who mattered to Ryan, and that realization alone made him uncomfortable. Samantha's confidence faltered, even though she tried to maintain her perfect image. The gap between appearance and reality became more obvious to anyone paying attention. Watching it unfold, I felt a quiet satisfaction. This wasn't about humiliating anyone publicly, it was about letting reality reveal itself in a natural way. Ryan's panic and Samantha's slipping composure were signs that truth was making its mark. I felt empowered, seeing justice happen without needing to raise my voice or force confrontation. By the end of the evening, the energy had shifted. Samantha's mask had weakened, Ryan's confidence wavered, and I had remained composed, strong, and in control. It was a turning point, the moment where patience, observation, and subtle action had brought the truth closer to the surface. I left the event knowing that the story was moving toward its inevitable reveal, and I was ready for whatever came next, calm and confident in the knowledge that reality had a way of exposing lies all on its own. The moment I had been quietly waiting for finally came. At a formal gathering with friends and colleagues present, Samantha's carefully built image began to collapse on its own. Something happened, a disagreement, a comment, or perhaps the pressure of keeping up appearances, and suddenly, she revealed her true self. Her words came out sharp, controlling, and defensive. The charm she had worn so flawlessly for everyone else vanished, replaced by insecurity and frustration. It was clear to everyone there that the perfect woman everyone admired was not perfect at all. Ryan's expression changed immediately. For the first time, he saw her as I had seen her all along. The smiles, the compliments, the calculated gestures, everything now appeared artificial. He realized he had misjudged both women. He had thought Samantha was flawless while undervaluing me, failing to see the depth, honesty, and strength I had always brought into his life. The shock on his face was unmistakable, a mixture of confusion, guilt, and regret. Watching from a distance, I felt a strange calm satisfaction. It wasn't about gloating or revenge, it was about seeing the truth finally emerge. Samantha's embarrassment was obvious, her attempts to maintain composure crumbling under the weight of reality. And Ryan, who had once seemed so certain of his choices, now had to confront the consequences of his blindness. It was a moment of quiet triumph for me, not loud or dramatic, but deeply fulfilling. I didn't need to say anything, the events themselves spoke volumes. Karma, in its own subtle way, had caught up with the pretensions and manipulations that had once threatened to affect my life. The balance had shifted, and justice had revealed itself without my needing to force it. I felt empowered, not because I had orchestrated a public humiliation, but because I had remained patient, observant, and strong while letting the truth take its natural course. All the years of heartbreak, betrayal, and rebuilding had led to this point. Seeing Ryan finally understand what I had known all along, the difference between superficial charm and genuine character, was a confirmation of my resilience. The emotional weight of the situation settled in slowly. Ryan's regret, Samantha's exposure, and my quiet strength created a mix of feelings that was hard to describe. There was no need for confrontation or vindictive words, the truth itself had done all the work. I felt validated, not through others' approval, but through my own awareness and perseverance. In that moment, I understood the real power of patience and self-respect. The ultimate revelation wasn't about proving someone wrong, it was about witnessing reality correct itself and knowing that I had emerged stronger and wiser. I walked away from the gathering with a sense of calm triumph, finally free from the weight of betrayal and secure in the knowledge that my life and choices were mine alone, guided by honesty, strength, and clarity. After everything had unfolded, I finally felt a sense of closure. I no longer needed to watch Ryan or Samantha, no longer felt the pull of curiosity or the sting of betrayal. The tension, the anger, and the uncertainty that had followed me for so long began to fade. I walked away from both of them, not with bitterness, but with a clear understanding of my own strength and worth. I had survived heartbreak, deception, and disappointment, and in doing so, I had grown into someone stronger, wiser, and more confident than I had ever been. I reflected on everything I had experienced. At first, I thought seeing Ryan with Samantha again would hurt me, reopening old wounds and shaking the progress I had made. But instead, it reminded me how far I had come. I had faced betrayal and pain, yet I had not allowed them to define me. I had rebuilt my life on my own terms, creating stability, joy, and independence that no one could take away. The sight of them now, their cracks and insecurities exposed, was no longer a source of pain, it was a reminder of my own growth. Every challenge I had endured became a stepping stone. The heartbreak taught me resilience, the lies taught me discernment, and the betrayals taught me the importance of valuing myself above anyone else's approval. I had lived through the worst of it and emerged not broken, but stronger, with a clarity that only comes from truly understanding who you are and what you deserve. Walking away, I felt a profound sense of empowerment. I didn't need to confront Ryan or Samantha further, their true colors had shown themselves, and the world had witnessed it in subtle ways. I had allowed reality to unfold without losing my peace or dignity. That calm, quiet strength became the most powerful form of justice I could imagine. And as I continued on my path, I realized something important: revenge is not about causing pain or humiliation, it's about living your life better, stronger, and happier than anyone who tried to hurt you. Seeing Ryan's confusion, Samantha's facade crumble, and knowing I had moved on to a life full of purpose and self-respect, that was the real triumph. I smiled to myself as I walked through the city streets, feeling the wind and hearing the sounds of life around me. Everything I had been through had led me here, to a place of healing and freedom. The past no longer had power over me, I carried only the lessons and the strength I had gained. And in that moment, I knew that sometimes the best revenge is simply living better than the person who tried to break you. It was not loud, it was not dramatic, but it was complete, and it was mine.